Welcome to the first episode of the Pelican Brief Podcast with Shua, Cohen, Jack Turell. And, I would say the number one coach in Jewish basketball right now, back-to-back Sarachek champion, the one and only, Coach Lior Schwartzberg. How are you, Coach? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. I'm glad to see you guys. Obviously, Jack, I saw you a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I was there. That was good. I have a question for Shua yourself. I have a couple. Other than really, we want to let out of the bag how much of a pain in the ass that Ryan was to coach. But we're here to reveal that. But my first question is, and I kind of said it before, and it really felt like, first off, congratulations on the back-to-back win, historic. But it really felt like that first one, to me at least, was for the Valley, for the town, for the alumni, Rabbi Stolberger. That felt like for the people. And this last one kind of felt like a legacy definer. Like it was for the legacies of the players, of the coaches, of all involved. What do you think were the biggest differences in both the approach and also the runs this year, last year, maybe even the first one where you came up a little short?
I think just, getting it, after the historic curse that's been looming over our heads for a long time, to know that it is no longer a thing. I think just getting done with it. And also, I think that also culminated with the way that the 2018 game went down. I think that, and also obviously 2000 last time Valley Torah was in, just a couple bad breaks along the way to just get it, get the monkey off our back. To finally do it. And I think that you made a good point for the alumni. I have an alumni chat of all the guys that played for me at Valley Torah. And I think that the amount of messages that were happening during the game and after the game it took me hours to get through them and sift through them. So I think that, there was a lot of an emotional release at that point for, I think, a lot of the alumni, a lot of the students, obviously the famous video of the Beit Midrash, kids jumping on tables. I'm shocked that there was no significant property damage and the windows are still there when they were done. But, there was a couple chairs probably broke, a couple tables probably, but just that, okay, we finally did it, right? We finally did it. I think that is a completely different experience and feeling than going back to back, right? It's a different, I think that it becomes more for the challenge, right? Let's try to do it again. Right. Let's try to win it back to back. We have the pieces to do it. And let's see if we can meet the challenge, as opposed to let's just do it. Let's just get it over with.
Right. I don't think I've seen in recent memory a team dominate each game as much as Valley had. And I know you went over a lot of the Sarachek stuff at the Herald pod, so I don't want to be redundant. But it's a famous thing. I think Isaiah Thomas, or it was Chuck Daly, who said the hardest thing to do is to win it back to back, is
Yes.
to, once you have done it and you have that hunger satiated, it's the motivation to keep going at it. What was the key motivator? Did you ever find it? I mean, I know you have a great group of guys, but what was the key to kind of keeping keeping them from being complacent? We won last year and we're even better this year.
And I was concerned about that during a good part of the year. I was concerned that the mindset was, well, we already did it, right? We're not going to do anything that's never been done. I was concerned about the fact that we had 7 weeks before Sarachek after season of a lot of downtime. And I was concerned that, that we did it, right? So winning again would be great, but I was concerned about the motivation. I think that early on, the first TABC game, we actually went down. And yes, I know based on a year ago, we kind of had the tendency of going down double digits before we woke up. I didn't know if this team had the same hunger that if they were going to go down, they'd punch back up. And I think we were never down more than 4 points until the championship game. And that TABC, I think we're down 12-8. Before you know it, it was 42-19. So I think that once they established themselves, they realized it almost turned into like we have to prove that this is our tournament. So we came out rather than, hey, let's not lose. Like we need to win. Like we have something to prove, and it's not winning. We already won this group one. We need to prove that last year was not a fluke. That it wasn't, there's some murmurs by certain schools that the only reason we won was because they were not playing us in a championship game a year ago. Right. So we want to show that, okay, it wasn't luck of the draw, but rather we can, if you do it twice in a row, it might not be luck anymore. And if it is luck, then maybe I can be lucky again next year. And I'm okay with that too.
I think we'd all be okay with that, especially on the healthy side.
I think once we stepped on the court this year, it was more, okay, this is we need to protect this, right? This is ours, right? We can't let anybody take it. Where last year we're trying to claw to have it.
Right. Interesting.
So
I have
on the topic. I don't want to go that deep in Sarachek, like Jack said, but while you're on the topic of the last game, you guys came out, you got punched in the mouth, right? You're down more than you've been the whole tournament. I remember we were talking in the group chat when it was happening. We were like, it wasn't really that you were getting significantly outplayed. They were hitting shots that were somewhat unsustainable. So like, how do you approach it as a coach? Like, they're hitting shots, you're down. What do you say to the guys? Then it's like their shots are just falling. They're taking tough shots. They're hitting them. What was the mentality like? How do you like?
I think that's basically what we said in the timeout. I think we were down 16-6. Maybe we called the timeout and you see like, we're going like, it's okay. Yes, we're down, but the alarms weren't saying they're hitting shots, right? And it's going to happen. Sometimes you play another team and they're not missing. It's nothing that you're doing wrong. They're just hitting shots. And I felt like early on we were not, and they were. And the question is, could they sustain it? And obviously SAR is good enough to sustain it, which is why we changed things up in the second quarter. But it was a question, could they? I know we're going to wake up, right? Our MO was that we score fast, right? So I know being down 10 with our style compared to their style, as long as we find our footing, we'd be fine. 10 points, although to some teams it might be like, this is going to be tough. We got to chip away at it. Let's get it down to 6 by halftime. We knew that we can score 10 points in a minute and a half, right? So we knew that at any moment, kind of we could strike. We just had to make sure that we don't fall too far behind to too good of a team. And that's kind of why we changed kind of our game plan. We had a game plan. We sprinkled it up, we threw it away, and we went with something different. And it worked.
Yeah, definitely worked. It's a bit like Golden State. Sometimes when they're down like 15, it feels like a one possession game.
Right. And if, as you said, it didn't feel like we were getting outplayed, we we're just getting outshot. And I think that's a very huge difference. They're making shots. And we saw the game before that they're capable of doing it and sustaining it to a certain degree. But even with Shalhevet, they jumped up 12, 14 points early on. And before you know it, is a tied ball game by the end of the game. Our pace and our ability to shoot, I knew that as long as we get 2 or 3 possessions in a row, we can really get this thing going.
I had a question. It's sort of on topic, sort of off, but you had the opportunity and the privilege, I think, to coach 3 of the 4 greatest Valley Torah players of all time. What are some of the differences in each of in Ryan, Miuchas, and Dan? Question is, what are some of the differences in, how your relationship with each of the players, how you approached it with each of the players? But something I'm actually most interested in, it's very rare that you'll ever see that the 2 best players in the country, arguably, are on the same team. And even more rare that you see them click so well, to get along. The 2 years, no ego thing. At least it's not like released. I hear a lot. I never heard anything with regards to that. I was a part of teams that I didn't like that guy. This guy didn't like me. We're all with, especially at the high school level, we were only 17, 18 years old with the whole community watching you. So what was kind of the secret in achieving that kind of unity that those 2 kids had? I mean, they're different. They're not like, oh, they're chavrusa, they learn together. No, they're different guys, right? So what was kind of the secret there?
I think, well, first, I mean, 3 of the top 5. I don't go far enough to know if that's true, but if it is, maybe you can throw Max Leibowitz in there as well. And then
He's
obviously,
7 on my list. He's number
so,
7.
and obviously, if I had a chance to coach you, Jack, maybe I'd have all 5. But,
There we go. That would have been fun.
But I think that it's a lot of it has to do with the personality. I don't. I think that at a certain point, winning was the only thing that mattered to this group. And even a guy like Johnny, who just won 2 John Wooden Award, CIF State Player of the Year, he didn't care, right? And you can see it when we played teams that we knew we were better than during the season. Guys like Johnny, he's like, I'm not gonna play today, right? I'm gonna let the other guys get reps. It wasn't, oh, I can score 100. It's about me. It's I'm gonna sit this one out, right? I'm gonna be a positive influence from the bench, and Noam did the same as well. There's one game where Noam gave a starting spot to somebody, and I think that speaks about them, because they could go out and score 60, 70 points if they wanted to, right? One of the teams that Johnny sat out for last year, he scored 20 points in the first quarter against him as a junior, and he knew he could very easily have gotten 80 that game or more, and then playing them again, he could have played, but he just said, I'm just going to let the other guys get theirs, feel good. They're always cheering for me. I'm going to cheer for them. I think that mindset is a little different when you have 2 players that good, that they're not trying to fight for their stats, not trying to fight for their limelight. I don't think that neither one was about that, right? I don't think anybody was really upset if somebody else got the spotlight for a moment.
It's amazing.
It is, especially when you're considering
that's lucky. And you see it all the time, locker rooms deteriorating.
It is. I mean, I know guys, and I'm not going to mention anybody's brothers, that they're close to 60 points against a team that's not as good, but they want to stay in to get that 60. So I'm not mentioning anybody's
brothers.
I mean, you can look at the Jewish Hoops America scoring totals to see who's the only player to ever score 60. But I'm just
Turell, if we're facing that school, which we're getting ours that game, maybe that's why we didn't win one. I think,
right. No, granted, it was in 3 quarters, but it was important to get to that number, and I understand both sides of it, right? But I think to speak of this team, and especially the Noam and Johnny, I don't think either one would have cared if somebody else was. There's a game where Johnny had 45. I didn't see Noam pouting about it. There's a game where Johnny barely scored. Noam had 33, and I didn't see Johnny pouting about it. I don't think either one of them really cared. And it was amazing that the culmination of it was a co-MVP in Sarachek, because both of their value was, very, very high for our team in different ways too. I think that also helped. They kind of filled each other's blanks to a certain degree, right? Johnny, the motor, the rebounding, Noam, Johnny, the offensive rebounding, Noam, the defensive rebounding, Noam, the passing, Johnny, the ability to get out and get his own buckets out of transition, and Noam being the point, the point person for transition, Johnny being able to outrun guys. They were really complementary with each other. So I think that also had something to do with it. Yeah.
Johnny's far and away the best offensive rebounding guard I've seen in Jewish hoops, ever. By far. No one's
he just plays hard. A lot of people would say, well, what's his skill? And I say he plays hard, and that's a skill.
Yeah.
When somebody
he has a Rodman intuition to know where the ball is going to bounce. He's always, wherever the ball is bouncing, he's there.
And he's a sneaky, he doesn't look, he's a good athlete too. You don't necessarily see it since, we don't really play above the rim, but he's a good, we try to throw him a couple lobs against SCR, and not that he was going to dunk them, but he can get up there. And I think that helps, when you're getting off his rebounds, just go get the ball.
No, it's really.
We want to make a shirt of just Johnny Ball basket. He's very tunnel vision towards the ball and has a knack for the ball.
No, the motor is definitely something that you can't teach. That's an intangible skill that I think often gets overlooked.
Right.
He has a 11th, volume, an 11th level where most people max at 10, where he just goes, no, we're not losing. No, we're separating right now. No. This is what's happening, and I'm going to do it. And you're going to watch me do it. And there's no attitude. There's no swag with it. It's just look in the eyes of like a tiger on a hunt trying to get its next meal. Like he's just it, and you saw it in a couple games where I think it was the semifinal, I can't remember, but he just pulled away. He's I'm gonna hit a bunch of threes, I'm gonna get a bunch of rebounds, and I'm gonna get a bunch of steals, and I'm gonna walk off the court, and I'm gonna go get grandma's pizza after. And it was like nothing. It just was clicked, instinctual, and that's not something that I think could be taught.
No, it's really, one of my lower level coaches who helped us out, Zarachek, he compared him to a robot. Like there's nothing emotional about it. It's just, shot is going up. That's your X. Therefore, I'm going to go get any missed shot is your Y. It's just, it wasn't, I'm tired. There's no fatigue here. There's no, I'm pouting because I didn't get the last shot. It's the shot goes up. I'm going to go get it. We get a rebound. I'm going to run. It's very, mechanical about it. It's, it's the motor, right? Also a very robotic thing. And that's kind of his personality. There's no I won't say there's no emotion because he's very passionate, but it's very business-like.
No, it's business. It's not emotionless. No, it is this is what I'm here to do. It's a fascinating thing to see. It's fascinating.
It's rare.
Talk about the block. I mean, 90% of people are jogging down the court, grabbing the ball after it goes in and starting the next play.
It's so funny that I feel so bad for that DRS guy because I think he had missed a layup earlier in the game. So he slowed down on the 1-2, which they always tell you, don't slow down on the 2 steps, finish fast. By a millisecond, he slowed down to make sure he'd make the layup and gave Johnny enough time to go.
He looked back too. I think that slowed him down as well.
Then he looked back.
He looked back.
Or then why didn't he pump fake? I don't know. That was
he was already in his 1-2. He was looking back and he had just missed 2 straight free throws too. So I think he felt a lot of pressure on him. Like, okay, I got to make it. Don't worry about the guy coming down. Just focus on the basket. I mean, how often in Sarachek history do you have a rundown block? Maybe once a tournament max.
Yeah, once a tournament.
I think there are 2, I think maybe in that tournament maximum. It's rare, right? So you're not thinking, okay, he's going to pin me. You're just saying, okay, I got to focus on the basket. If he fouls me, make sure it's not very frequent, especially a, 5'11", 6-foot kid to run you down and pin you off the rim. Or off the backboard.
What was the biggest difference? I mean, how long have you been with Valley Torah now?
This is going into 9 year.
Ninth year. Wow, that's right. I remember when you first came on. You first come on. You have Ryan and Max. You come into a good situation. So you've coached Ryan. You've coached Max, Johnny, Miuchas. What's the biggest difference in your approach with each of these players as an individual, but also these players as duos? Like what was the differences and similarities and kind of walk through kind of what that's like?
I think one of
with high profile and
it's kind of tough to think about how to approach it. I think that the way that we ran, I think the teams was a little different. I think with Ryan and Max, a lot of it was trying to force Ryan and Max to get the ball and find ways to get them the ball and have 200 different ways for them to get the ball in various locations and get them the ball. I think a lot with this team that makes it a little different is one, I think we have way more talent on this team that we just, this year and last year than Ryan and Max had. I think that notoriously, Ryan's senior year, I'm not going to mention names, but we give them slack still. They're open with the ball and they refuse to shoot it.
Right.
And I think that, when you look at the game again, that's a teaching moment for me. How do I create an environment that players are comfortable making basketball plays? Right. And making them understand is, kind of what they need to do and when they need to do it. I think that this year talent helps. But I don't think there's ever a time where I can remember 2 times this last tournament where somebody was scared to shoot, but it wasn't because they were scared of anything outside of, oh, wow, I'm in Sarachek. This is my first year. I have the ball. I don't want to screw this up. Right. And even this year, we yelled at them. I said, you shoot the ball. I don't care if you hit the side of the backboard. You got to shoot the ball a couple of times. It's the only way that you're they're going to respect you, but for you to get the hibby jibbies out. I think more talent makes it much easier to approach Johnny and Noam because there's more talent, right? Even though some teams try to go triangle 2, you couldn't go triangle 2 on us this year. We had too much firepower. We had too many guys that can hit shots. I think Ryan and Max, Ryan's junior and Max senior, that you could triangle 2 us every game.
Right.
Guys were physically
List was feasting if you went triangle and 2 this year.
List, but also Rabibo, he had 2
Rabibo
in the CABC game. He had 15 points in a championship game. He can hit shots. And Raz Vivante hit a shot at 3 against Eula from the corner. He's capable of getting hot. And we bring off the bench a couple players as well that can make shots, right? And I think that during Globerman, I was talking to the Frisch coach and I, during one of my games, I said, "What do you see?" And he said, "The one thing I see is that with your team, you don't know who's going to be the guy that's going to make the shot. With most teams, kind of who's gonna lead them every possession. And with this year, like when Ryan and Max played, it's okay. It's clear, take Ryan and Max out, and they're gonna struggle. Now that being said, Milken did triangle into us in the Milken Classic, and we still beat them 72-71. And Ryan and Max each had like 35 points, and that's the point. Like if you find a way to slow them down, you're gonna beat us. And I think that's why we lost to SCR. That year, and besides Oppenheimer hitting like 5 or 6 threes from the corner, was the fact that Ryan and Max were not scoring. But championship game, Noam only has 9 points, 8 points. So good job, you stopped Noam. We still scored. Right. So, and that was a frequent thing. I know Johnny scored well in that tournament. He had a 42-point game, but for the most part, championship game, right? Rabibo and Liss each have 15.
Put their names on the map,
right?
Put their names on the map. I'm excited to see what that looks like next year,
right?
With those 2 at the helm.
Yeah, and me too. Trying to figure it out. I think the challenge is in front of us, but I think that if the right things click, who knows? Right? Yeah. I don't think we lack the ability to do something, crazy.
Yeah, hell yeah, I'm with it.
We're excited.
I have a year of eligibility left if you need a big man to bang with 30-year-olds.
I don't think size is going to be an issue, right? We do have some size next year, and this year we didn't even play with Levy, who broke his knee in 2 different directions, and he's out of a brace and he'll be back next year. He was only a junior, so size is not something we lack with him in the middle. I mean, and the thing is, he was just clicking before that injury too.
He kind of had his coming out party last year in the Sarachek tournament where he wasn't. Yes. You needed him versus
Magen David.
Yeah, with Malamed and some of these other guys that they had sent, and Levy kind of came into his own. It was fun to watch that happen and watch it unfold. I was excited to see the progress, especially because I had seen him earlier in the year and he kind of developed from skinny sophomore to muscular junior. I was excited.
And he can also shoot. People just assume that he's a big, and you expect, okay, what is a 6'6", yeshiva high school player like? Probably around the rim, maybe has a good hook shot at best, but he has a great face-up game, good mid-range. He can hit threes. He can put the ball on the floor. He just needs to be confident in himself. But if he believes in himself, he's probably 16 and 10 every game. If he believes in himself. And near the end of the year, you kind of saw it. He had a couple 8-10 point games. Obviously, he's not going to get as many shots on last year's team as he will in the future. But he was blocking shots. He was rebounding the ball. He was outletting the ball. There's a lot of stuff that, Jewish Hoops just reports points. Right. So his name didn't always show up because we have a lot of other guys that are getting the points. But I mean, he was doing so many intangible things that he's going to be huge for us.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
He's going to be huge, physically huge for us. But, we have guys coming back that can score. We have guys coming back that can rebound. We have size. We have really good pesky defenders. We don't have a guy that's necessarily going to average 40 points a game in CIF playoffs and win John Wooden Award on paper. But, think of the jump that Noah made from junior to senior year when it comes to his strength, his abilities. We have 8 or 9 juniors. One of them could make the same hop.
Yeah, it helps that he grew a few inches also, right?
It helps. There's something
Did Noam
to
grow?
Noam did grow, yeah.
Hopefully he comes to YU at 6'5". I'd be really
Yeah.
excited.
I think he still has some room he's only 17, so he has room to grow.
Yeah, and he's gonna fill out. How skinny was Ryan? Now Ryan's 220.
Right. And that's the craziest thing about this team is Johnny and Noam should technically be juniors in high school. And Gabriel should technically be a sophomore, but he's a junior, and those two are seniors.
Wow.
Actually, all four of our seniors are going to graduate at 17 years old.
Well, technically, if they reclass, they all could be sophomores, right?
But they had to do it early. And yes, according to the CIF rules, I think they could go there July. So is it 1? I think they could technically be sophomores this year. If they did the whole like double holdback and
they did the whole thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of touch on a point you had brought up about like believing in himself. And I think this is something that a lot of coaches and players, have with specifically young people who are even thrusted into the limelight or thrusted on a team where you might have some imposter syndrome. Like I wouldn't be shocked if I was in Levy's position. I was him. I'm not from the Valley. I'm not from California. I'm surrounded by Liz and Yuchas and Dan. What do you do as a coach, like knowing to kind of approach that issue of belief in yourself, of getting them to believe? What's the best way to do it?
Honestly, I think a lot of it was player led, right? When we have the shirts that said family, and it's a slogan that we kind of live by. We kind of try to empower them. And I think a lot of the players, if you don't want to shoot and your best player comes up to you and says, shoot the ball, right? Or, you have your leaders saying, you got to take that shot, right? Don't Ben Simmons us right now. Just put up the ball, right? I get plenty. This is yours, right? Or when you have guys saying, hey, throw it to Levy on the block, he has a mismatch, or, Ethan just hit 2 shots. Let's run a play for Ethan, right? That I'm happy. Right. The cheer on to others as you want to be cheered on to you. Right. You can say the golden rule of a good teammate. That's what we had. Right. And look, we're going to screw up just like with any family. Right. You're going to have somebody make a mistake and you're going to say that was wrong. You probably shouldn't have done that. Let's move on. The same way of believe in yourself. I believe in you. You can do it. We kind of operate that way. It's not me necessarily telling them to shoot. I like when the team, operates by the players. And I'm just a cheerleader.
Awesome. Interesting.
Coach, want to go a little bit back in time in here. How did you get into basketball? How did you get like your education as a coach? What was your process getting to the position you are today?
Okay, so going way back in time.
Schwartzberg story, baby. Yeah.
Back in Massachusetts when basketball was first invented, I was there with Naismith. No, I'm just kidding. No, honestly, I didn't play basketball till later on in life. I actually was a soccer player, and a lot of the guys at Valley Torah will tell you right now during PE, I play more soccer than I do basketball. And actually I did tennis before basketball, I did judo before basketball, I did swimming before basketball, and it wasn't until like later in elementary school when I picked up a basketball and fell in love with it. And it just kind of happened there. And I grew up in Israel. And when I moved out here to Orange County, I grew up in Orange County when I moved out to the US. It was kind of like the games that people would play during the playground was basketball, right? There wasn't soccer really at that time. This is, around the time where they're trying to make a push for soccer to be a big thing in the United States. And yes, I played AYSO, but it just basketball at break, basketball at lunch, basketball after school, basketball on the driveway, basketball on the street if it's a cul-de-sac. Right. I'm a part of that generation that played outside a lot. Where we'd go on the blacktop, in summer we weren't like, oh, we don't have a gym, we can't play. It was just basketball year round. And I always liked it. And I always liked the tactical part of it. I always try to figure out the game. And then I went to play high school at Capo Valley in Orange County for a very well-known coach, and Brian Mulligan, who's been there for 40 years now. And his dad was a college coach at UC Irvine and a lot of coaches around. And I started thinking the game a little different. And when I graduated high school, he said, come coach for me. And that's kind of when it started. I coached his Frosh. It was a sophomore team because it was a public school. So there's like 5 teams. And I coached his sophomore team. And I think we went like 22-1 that year. That was my first year. But what he always highlighted that was really impressive. And this is like, if you know me, you kind of figure that this is going to happen. But I would go to sophomore games and record them and get film on sophomore games and like study the other team. So when we had a practice with, my 15-year-old sophomore players on the sophomore team, we kind of, we knew the other team's plays. We kind of were prepared for them, which you don't see on the lower levels. And I kind of just fell in love with that, trying to figure it out, trying to be one step ahead mentality, and just loved coaching. And went from that high school, went to Brentwood High School, then UC Irvine, Cal State Northridge, Cal State LA. And then I went into the club route, Earl Watson Elite, which is kind of how my path connected with Valley Torah and the Turell family.
The Turell family is a big plus to the coaching.
Right.
Yeah, because Ryan was part of Earl Watson.
Yes, he was. And, I at that point, I'm already married. I'm trying to think about a family, and look, college coaching is not what it seems to be, right? You think about Coach K and Calipari, you're not thinking about the video guy that's, making $100 a month, that's working 16 hours a day. You don't think about those guys, but those guys are the majority of college coaches, and you can't have a family that way. Right. You can't really stabilize yourself. I remember before Valley Torah, it was every year is like, oh, I might get this job in Wyoming, or I might go to Cornell, or, oh, I know this guy who just got a job in Easter. You can't, it's every year you're looking for a new job. Every year you may relocate. It's just the toll it can take on a family that I didn't have yet, was going to be tough. And it's hard to be, it's hard to be Jewish in Spokane, Washington. It's hard to be Jewish in Laramie, Wyoming. It's hard to be, and you don't know where your path will take you, and you got to do whatever you can to do what you need to do in order to move up the ladder. And that wasn't necessarily the life. So I was at Earl Watson Elite, and showed up to one of the games, and I was just supposed to do scouting reports. That was my job. I'm the elite national scout for Ryan Silver, who is a good friend of mine. And he goes up to me, he's like, do you have your certification to coach? I said, yeah. He said, well, there's a coach that hasn't been cleared yet, so he can't coach. You need to coach his team. I said, okay, well, I don't know any of the players. I don't know any of their sets. I know nothing. And he said, that guy right there, he knows everything. So he says, hey, Ryan, come over here. And Ryan showed me all the team sets, and I was able to coach him that weekend. And paths changed. Isn't it magic how it works?
That's so crazy.
The only guy, so his coach was unavailable, and the only guy from his team that was there at the time was Ryan, and he happened to be within eyesight of Ryan Silver, who said, that guy's on the team, ask him.
Wow. That's so wild. And then the bridge connected.
And then within 2 weeks, right, the coach and the AD at Valley Torah leave at the same time.
Right. Andre Chevalier goes to coach
Sarah Canyon. And then Adam Levitt just got a promotion. He was in banking, and he got a promotion. He couldn't be an athletic director anymore. And I just, maybe 2 years before that, finished my master's in athletic administration. So I guess the stars aligned. It was meant to be.
Oh, that's wild. That's
right.
Great.
So that's kind of how I got to Valley Torah. But coaching is always, obviously, has been a part of me. When I was in high school, I was coaching youth basketball. I was coaching 5th and 6th graders. So
that's fun, by the way. The 6th grade coaching. What's the most hostile 6th grade environment that you've been to? Because I was just at a Ramaz MDS game that got.
Well, it's a little. I wasn't doing like Yeshiva League, middle school. That's a little different. That's
crazy.
Yeah, that's like up there with AAU levels, right? But yeah, so I've always wanted to coach. Just getting to Valley Torah was right. A lot of things just, I guess, kind of happened, and everything lined up.
That's amazing.
One of the things that I noticed, and Jack and I were talking about, is like you're very, from my limited knowledge of tactics in basketball, you see you're very creative with the way you make both defensively and offensively. Like this year on defense, you didn't really have a big. but you had a defense that worked really well, that was able to put pressure and play up tempo and really make the other team work. And I mean, Mujoz was kind of like the de facto big. He
Yeah.
took a lot of charges and stuff, but like it was just very cool to see how you managed to have a very, very strong defense against teams that had much bigger players than you inside without having a big.
Right.
So
It was the defense is, I always say it's by committee. I'm really big. I wouldn't say necessarily on positionless basketball, but I think that defensively, everybody needs to be able to guard everybody. Right. I don't believe you're not going to guard the big because you're short. One of our best post defenders 2 years ago was David Paz, and he was 5'7", 5'8". Right. It's just about it's by committee. Everybody's guarding the ball, everybody's guarding the weak side. We switch it from man to zone, just trying to keep teams off their rhythm. But I think, first of all, Miuchas was our de facto big once Levy went down. Obviously, Levy being 6'5" is considered big, but I mean, what is a big when you come to yeshiva level basketball, right? Like 5'11"?
6'2".
Well, yeah, 6'2" is like, and that's actually funny. You said that a couple of years ago. I had a player named Akiva Kamornik who was on our bench out with Sarah.
Isn't he like the third all-time leading rebounder?
Yes,
Valley
so he
Torah?
had the single season most rebound. Although I think Noam probably broke his record. I got to double check because Noam had a couple games this year of like 25 rebounds. It's insane.
It's crazy.
Insane. And you don't even know. Like I think Noam had like a 30, 20, and 20 or 30, 20, and 15 game, and I wouldn't have even guessed. He does it so, effortlessly. But so Akiva, like I remember this was right before COVID. So Poppers was a freshman, and he interviewed me before the game, and he mentioned how it was against, I think, SAR, and SAR said that they weren't used to playing a traditional big like Akiva, and Akiva's like 6 foot, maybe 6'1" with shoes, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, oh, that's a traditional big. I was unaware. I just thought because he just rebounds a lot and scores around the rim, you're calling him a big. So I don't even know if you need bigs. And basketball is a guard-oriented game, right? It's the way that it's played now. You don't play with two. There's no twin towers anymore. The twin towers are now in the corner shooting threes. So it's just the style of the game. I don't think you need size. I think you need speed. I think you need heart. I think you need, smarts and skill. I don't think you need size. But it helps to have Noam in the middle who is like 6'2", 6'3", and averages like 11 rebounds a game. That also helps.
And like 3 charges a game also.
Right. And look, Gabriel is also like 6'1", and Ethan Liss is also 6 foot. So like, it's not we didn't have a big, but we weren't short.
No, you weren't small.
And you were long. There was a lot of length.
It wasn't 2 Oppenheimers and 3 Zach Mullers. It was you had legitimate size.
Yeah.
No, I really like what you say about positionless basketball, because like that is the way of future. I mean, like, look, again, I use the Warriors as an example, but like Draymond is their big. He's 6'7", which is small for the NBA. It might be big for Yeshiva League. But so yeah, so the way you managed to make that work was just really impressive. And it's one of the things, like there's a lot of conversation that goes on with YU that, oh, they need like a 6'7" guy, they need a big. And I've always been of the opinion that like that's absolutely not true. The biggest issue that they need is a gang rebound on defense. Is like,
right. Rebounding is not. I mean, even look at a FDU beating Purdue, the smallest team in Division I, beating the biggest team. Right. It's just, can you rebound the ball with that size? If you can, then I think the speed and skill is more important than size. Now, if you get size that has speed and skill, then you get Kevin Durant. Right. But yeah, and that's obviously right. If you have the skill, the speed, I mean, even, Ryan, when he played, he had the size, he had the speed, he had the skill, right? So you get those unicorns. Yeah. But, right. I don't think you need size, especially for yeshiva basketball. Now, if you do, right, Magen David almost pulled off an upset in the quarterfinals because they had the size that had skill. But I don't think you necessarily need them. And I don't know if they got out rebounded or not, but it helps to have that, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. And one of the things that like another thing that really impressed me is that you guys really are like a running team. You went out and ran, but you also were able to like rebound the ball defensively, which is hard to do both of those things
Right.
at the same time. So you did a good job of keeping the right people in, getting bodies on guys, and going out and running. So that was cool to see also. I kind of want to get a little bit into your like general coaching philosophy in terms of like what identity do you try to set with your team going into the season? Like what are like the non-negotiables, core principles, like all those type of things. You don't need to give away all the secret sauce.
Does
But
it change also? Does it change by team?
Yeah, no,
Like,
of
are you
course. I
constantly
believe,
adjusting?
I think it's every season is new, right? Um, somebody asked, oh, who's starting next year? And I said, that's not my choice, right? The players will tell me who deserves a start by how they act on the court in practice, right? How they act in the preseason. I'm not going to sit here and be like, here's the 5, and that's what it is. Even last year I said, look, I know 2 guys that are definitely going to start. The rest of you got to figure it out. So I think every year is different, right? I don't go into the season thinking, okay, here's the offense we have to run, here's a defense we have to run. I think it evolves, right? Usually our go-to plays at the beginning of the year are not our go-to plays at the end of the year. I think what they execute better, their comfortability, will let me know what we need to do. Same with defense. And if anything, I'd say is non-negotiable. I think that defense is non-negotiable in terms of do the best that you can, right? Not everybody's going to be picking up 84 feet, turning guys. Like, not everybody has that DNA, but you got to play hard. You got to know what's happening. You can't turn around and be like, what defense are we in? You need to know what's happening when you're on the court. Usually when a guy will turn and be like, what defense are we in? I go, okay, you go get him, right? If he doesn't go on the court, know what we're in, he's not ready to be on the court. I don't really pull guys out for really bad shots unless I say, hey, let's try to move the ball. Oh, that guy was better. Or if he says, I need to get mine or something like that. But I don't think this year I pulled anybody for taking a shot. So, I'm not too worried about the offense. Maybe it's because I had Noam and Johnny and Ethan, that I wasn't too worried about the offense. But I think the non-negotiable is you got to rebound, you got to defend.
And then what's your philosophy in terms of like crashing the glass versus getting back? Because I noticed you crash the glass more than most teams. And I think a lot of teams are far too conservative with crashing the glass. I think the analytics kind of says 3 people crashing the glass is the ideal. And I noticed that you have that sweet spot, besides for having Johnny Dan grab every rebound available.
Right. That helps.
No, but it is they all do crash. Like,
Yeah.
you would think that you would get out rebounded by Cats who have the 6'5" twin towers, but in the meantime, we were killing them on the glass.
We do definitely train to crash, and I think especially from the weak side, I think one of the hardest thing in basketball is, and I always tell them all the time, boxing out a weak side corner crasher. It's one of the hardest things to locate and to get a good read on it. So if you're on the weak side, you have to crash. That's, again, the rebounding defense, that's a part of rebounding. If you're too tired to go get the ball, then maybe you shouldn't be on the floor. My thing is we're going to crash 5, we're going to get back 5. So, obviously that's idealistic. But if I can get 80% of the team crashing 80% of the time, we're going to be in good spot. Now, that being said, sometimes we have teams that are going to leak out. So we're going to change kind of our calls, because we have like defensive rebounding calls in terms of how many we want to crash. But it kind of bit us in the butt a little bit against Sierra Canyon, right? Where guys weren't getting back in time and we gave a lot of transition points. I think we could have done that differently.
They were Sierra Canyon.
It's a pretty tough team to.
So I got mad at some of the guys because I was like, okay, that's your job, right? We talked about we're changing what we're doing, and your job is to get back, not go get it. And, we need to make them play in the half court, not in the full court. That being said, we're still going to crash even against Sierra Canyon and not really care, because they're not going to box. They're going to go get the ball, and if the bounce goes the right way, maybe we can get a finger on it. But for the most part, we're going to crash some. We're going to get some back and go from there.
And do those change those calls? You'll change, you'll just yell something out in the middle, or usually in timeouts, or how?
Yeah, we go into a game thinking, okay, this is what we're going to do, but we're not going to just stay married to that if we need to make a change.
What is the Sierra Canyon story? How did that I don't know if they asked it on the previous podcast you were on, so I'm sorry if that's a redundant.
No worries. No worries. So we were looking for more games during the year, and that was one of the options. And we had some miscommunication too with Eula, because we're supposed to play Eula that day. Probably my fault, but we played a bad game of telephone. And that game went off the books. And my assistant coach, Coach Andre, when he was younger, and also obviously Andre being a Valley Torah, we tried to, hey, can we get it done? And literally 8 p.m. the night before, I get a call from their assistant AD, be like, we can do the game. So we didn't know we're playing Sierra Canyon until the night before we played Sierra Canyon, and we put it together. And yes, I was stupid enough. I watched like 5 or 6 of their games, try to figure it out. But
that was going to be my question. How many hours did you spend?
Yeah, and we had a scout report. Yeah, we're going to take it seriously. And, so yeah, we did what we normally do for every game. We try to prepare the best we can. But that's kind of how it came about. 98th minute after a bad game of telephone. And, and I was shocked they said yes, but they said yes. And because there's really nothing in it for them. They're not going to.
Except
but just the experience was phenomenal. And the best thing, it was during their Christmas break. So the crowd was all Valley Torah. So even we're making our first basket, it's 14-2. The crowd is going wild, right? And just to play in that environment against that speed, that size, it was invaluable for our guys. But
I also like the invaluable YouTube clip, Bronny James versus the Hebrew Hammer. I thought that was cool. That was a cool nickname.
Right, it came with all the pub that had to do with it, and we gave it our best shot. I think we, out of 32 minute, probably competed with them pretty well for about 22 minutes. It just, those other 10 minutes, they had 17 dunks, they had like 31 transition points, 22 offensive rebounds. It's going to be tough to compete with those numbers. So,
and Johnny Dan had a remarkable game. He hit some crazy shots. Was that your like thinking going in, like that this was just going to be a great experience for the guys? Like,
yeah, there's nothing to lose. And I told him before the game, I said, look, I understand. Like, one of my players texted like, oh my God, Bronny just walked past me. He's going to play. I was like, of course he's going to play. His team is playing. And my big speech was like, play basketball. Don't idolize men, right? Like, they're just high school kids like you. Just go and play as hard as you can and give it the best shot. And enjoy the moment, enjoy the experience, and see what comes with it.
Amazing. And it's a memory that they'll always remember. I remember I got dunked on by Aaron Holiday. I still get to brag to people. Listen, I played Aaron Holiday in high school. They called a charge. So the dunk didn't count. But thank God they didn't have YouTube clips like they did now.
All right.
I don't know if I'd have the nickname the Hebrew Hammer, but that would have been, it's something that you'll never forget. They'll always be able to take that with them, which I think is really cool.
So Coach, I'm known as like the analytics guy with the YU team. I do some work on that end, and so like I just wanted to ask, like, does that play a part at all in like your coaching approach? Do you stay up to date on any of the current thinking? How do you think about that? I know you guys shoot a lot of threes.
I try to. I'm not as plugged in with all the basketball concepts and train of thoughts and the way that the game is changing like I used to. Obviously, if I'm not coaching, I'm with my kids, who you may hear right outside the door. And I think they're itching for me to come outside. But I don't really stay in tune with the changes. I think that a lot of changes also may not always be applicable to our team. I read an article once about the pass being king. And I think this was when Ryan was playing. And to me, it's like Ryan taking a shot sometimes is better than a pass. So extra passes doesn't always necessarily mean better shots. So I think something is not as applicable as to, maybe Princeton University. So.
Right. Yeah, shot selection is probably one of the toughest things to like coach and get it to guys to like good shots, because it's hard in the moment to know what like a high percentage shot is. But especially if you're like telling them to take a specific type of shot or only take threes or whatever. But I mean, the shot Valley Torah shot selection to me seemed pretty good overall in the Sarachek tournament.
That, or our shooters are that good that we make the extra pass.
Yeah, I would say that the shooters are that good. Those threes were deep. They were not. Those
Yeah. Miracles is pulling up from the logo sometimes.
Right. But it wasn't like a why. That's kind of the way they play. And, the idea is I'm not going to pull them out for a bad shot. I'm going to pull them out for other things. I think allowed them to kind of play, loose and not be like, oh, if I miss this, I'm out. So I think that helps too.
Right. There's no pressure that like, oh, I have to take the perfect shot. They're not thinking about that in the game. So they get to play.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You guys I wanted to ask this question, and this will probably be my last one, as we've taken you away, and I'm sure Shua has some more. You've had so we talk about positionless basketball, no bigs, but Miuchas was definitely the floor general. He was definitely a point guard. He was definitely like really the engine. He ran an engine. He was a conductor offensively, which is, I think, you don't really have that a lot. You don't get that every year. Going into next year, it'll be the biggest adjustment, having had that for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Going into it without that IQ, conducting the operation on the court.
I think we're going to have to figure it out. I think it's going to be done by committee. But I had the same question, right, when Ryan graduated. How are you going to do without Ryan? And maybe the first year was kind of tough, but everybody kind of finds their rhythm and finds their spot. I'll miss Noam, so this is not a knock to Noam, but I'm not going to lose sleep over the fact that he's not coming back, because he's not coming back. Right? There's nothing I'm going to do about it. He's not going to come back. Somebody's going to have to step up, or they don't step up. Right? It's that's kind of the way it's going to happen. But it's from a tactical perspective, somebody's going to have to step up, or they don't. It's not like I can force somebody to be Noam. I can't.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, I'll have one last, because I want to let you get back to your kids. So another thing that impressed us, and Jack and I were texting about this, is that like the offensive scheme that you had going when you had Ryan and the Altitz and Max, totally different scheme than the one you're running today with and like that flexibility is like a very good sign in my opinion from a coach. It means that there's no ego involved, that, oh, I have this system and the personnel have to fit the system, not that you fit the system to the personnel. So how do you, like, year in, year out, how do you like approach like what scheme I'm going to run? I know based on the players you have, but like how do you kind of?
Well, they let me know, not necessarily verbally, but right, we throw a lot of basketball at them, right? It's not like, hey, I'm just going to run a 2-3 zone, I'm just going to run motion offense. We throw a lot at them, and I'm getting knocks over there, so it's a good thing this is the last one. We throw a lot of stuff at them, and whatever I think they end up succeeding in is kind of what we're going to go with. And I thought that just play basketball mentality worked for us really well.
Do you find that in the preseason though? Is that where, because you said
as the season happens, it kind of naturally and organically develops.
Interesting.
So.
Right, man. Well, this is great, man. I had a great time. An hour conversation. This is with Coach Schwartzberg. The first time, I think, since Sukkot of 2018 that I had you for an hour, and me and Shua have been fangirling over this interview for a long time. So we're happy that we were able to make it happen. Thanks so much for your time.
No, thank you guys for having me.
We really tried to keep the humor out of it. I
thank you. That was my concern. It was going to be too funny, and it was going to hurt laughing that hard. So
there you go. That'll be next week when me and Shua have Elon Gold on to talk about it. Coach Schwartzberg, thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you guys. Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. That's Pelican Brief, episode 1. All right.
Take care.